Hi, I'm Arushi Vice President for the Asia Pacific region at Kingsley Gate Partners, an executive search firm that's focused on recruiting leadership and board candidates. Today, I'm going to be talking to Prashant Issar as part of our In the Spotlight series, where we seek to get insights and share thought leadership from the business communities. As a quick introduction, Prashant is a co-founder and CEO at Stratix Hospitality. He's someone who's really broken convention and created a service design employing hearing impaired staff, the service staff, which he complements by curating an eclectic menu. He started his career with the Taj Group of Hotels, Mumbai, before moving to London, which he considers the culinary capital of the world. Spent 10 years involved with new openings in Soho and Chelsea. He also managed a Michelin star restaurant in Knightsbridge for over 5 years. He's worked with top names in the business, including the likes of Camilla Punjabi. While Prashant obviously was hungry for more, he bagged a scholarship at the Henley Business School where he majored in entrepreneurship. And heading back to India, he worked to head brands like the Akasan and Yaucha before really creating his own brands like Mirchi and Mime in 2015, Madhura and Mime in 2016, and now Ishara at the Palladium. He's delivered two TED Talks and, on a personal note, decided to take up long distance running in 2016. He's today completed 12 half marathons and two full. Says he's just getting started. Let's get talking and see where the restaurant business is headed, according to Prashant. Prashant, welcome on board. Really good to have
Thank you,
you.
Arushi. Thank you.
Prashant,
Thank you for having me.
thank you. Prashant, I would just want to kind of, just by way of extension to your introduction, I first want to applaud you on how you've paved the way, creating inclusive growth for speech and hearing impaired as part of a successful business model. How did you really go about sensitizing people and, the customers around you to come to believe in their superpower?
Well, to be honest, it was actually so exciting that it was actually easier than it appears to be. And we had a wonderful, wonderful journey and continue to be on that. Now, sensitizing customers, well, we had to sensitize both the sides. We had to sensitize customers towards our staff and our staff towards customers. And but I must say that in my career so far, I've faced lesser challenges from people with speech and hearing impairment than with people who don't have that.
Oh, I can.
So, and fortunately, we've had a great run. The customers have been thrilled, and you see the intrinsic satisfaction that one gets in interacting with a person that you think you might not be able to because of a communication barrier. So the intrinsic satisfaction you get in our restaurant actually adds to the product. So it became very simple. We had a menu in the form of a matrix. So every column and every row had a sign. You can just use two signs to point to order any dish, or merely just point to the product. At the particular dish you want to order. So it was very simple, and these boys and girls, or ladies and gentlemen, how we sometimes call them, uh, they are far more warmer, friendlier, and smile a lot more than the rest of us. And I think they're very well suited for hospitality. In fact, better than most of us. So yeah, we are enjoying what we're doing.
That's amazing, actually, Prashant. Then how did you go about training the staff, and how did you really manage to kind of source people that you wanted to kind of train?
So initially, the sourcing was a challenge because we had to convince more than the actual staff. We were to convince their parents, and there were times when we went for interviews that we had the entire family and friends and neighbors all sitting interviewing us rather than us interviewing them. And so we realized that, see, parents are possessive and caring towards their children, and if the child has any kind of a limitation, then they are far more exponentially possessive. So what we did was we came back, we learned sign language ourselves, and then started interacting with our potential employees in front of their parents in sign language, and that gave the parents that satisfaction, that these people are serious about it. And so that was the challenge overcome. And so we had I remember a particular day when we were really not getting people to work with us. And we went to this fair for the disabled in an institution called NASIO in Mumbai. And by noon, we had over 100 applications. So that was a game changer for us. So that was one. And then training, we built a training program with 5 modules. We had life sciences, job readiness, service skills, etiquette and grooming, so and simple English. So what we did with life sciences was tell them that, what, you have to actually work and be independent, because a lot of them were living with their parents even after getting married and having children. So they were used to being dependent. So we were making them independent. We were teaching them simple English, because for us, the educational criteria was nothing. We didn't have any criteria. Only criteria was, fine, if you cannot speak in here, the only criteria was you would want to work. And so the training program took about 8 weeks, and then 3 weeks of training in the restaurant. And we had a fully committed, very excited and energetic team of people who we just could not keep away from customers, because they were so excited to take up the challenge and show the world that, what, here we are and we can do this better than the rest of you. So it really worked.
This is amazing, Prashant. And has this really inspired people around you to kind of think through a similar concept? Do you see more coming around, up and around about you?
Well, there are a few. In fact, a few companies had tried this earlier as well.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it did not sustain for long. The reason it sustained with us is because our entire front of house service staff were speech and hearing impaired. If you just take them in a minority, then it doesn't really work. But there are a lot of businesses which are trying to use people for their abilities and not their disabilities. So I remember a lot of people from IIT, because my restaurant was in IIT Bombay. They would come, all these startups, and they would come and talk to me and ask me, what do you suggest and how should we take over, start our new venture. And I used to tell them that, see, the biggest drain on any new venture is is attrition. So by the time you train the people fully, they leave. So why not choose people who have certain limitations and so find it difficult to get a job, and train them, because then they will stay with you as a core resource. And that, I think, will lay a good foundation for your venture in the initial stages. And so a few of them did a variety of things. I remember uh, before we opened Mirchi in Mime, we had gone to Eureka Forbes call center, which is run by the orthopedic, everyone there is orthopedic disabled. And I must tell you, they are so far patient and they do their job so well that that was an inspiration for us. So I'm sure there are a few people who are taking inspiration from what we are doing. And I would suggest that more and more ventures in hospitality at least take this up. So yeah, it's a beginning.
This is fantastic, Prashant. I mean, very, very encouraging, and kudos to you and your team, really. So, coming to the situation that we are all, the whole world is really facing, and India is, of course, facing the maximum brunt currently, which is the pandemic. So, the business and the future of the restaurant business, I'd like to ask you a few questions. So, while we can't really predict the future, the phase that we saw between the first phase of the pandemic and now the second wave, it was somewhat an indicator that consumers had not entirely given up on the restaurant industry. So, what are the current trends, and what is it that we've really learned between the first and the second wave, Prashant?
So, Arushi, I think the in between period between phase one and the return of the pandemic, so to say, what was a good curtain raiser
Yeah.
to give the businesses, any business, and so also hospitality, the confidence that business will be back.
Yeah.
See, I've always believed in the fact that challenges are temporary, but businesses are permanent. You know, and that kind of that period in between from October to about February, uh, beginning of March, validated my thinking to
Mhm.
me, and convinced me that, see, we did it at a time when there was no vaccine.
Yeah.
So this time around, we know that the vaccine is the permanent solution to at least this pandemic. And so we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, there is always going to be a pent up demand for any product or service that people are deprived of for a particular period of time. And I can see a phenomenal season. You see, the Indian season starts with the festivities around September, October, just towards the end of the monsoon. I can see a phenomenal season ahead.
Yeah.
You know, unless something really, really goes wrong, then we'll have to possibly push it further. But I can see by that time, if we've got the vaccinations happening in the right numbers, then I can see a fantastic season.
Mhm.
People did come back with the risks around them, so I'm sure people will come back with the risk behind them, you know so I can really see it. I'm very optimistic, so to say.
So, Prashant,
Yeah.
just in continuation to this, what are the learnings that you really had from, observing the restaurants in other countries, and what have really been the key takeaways for us in India?
So I think a very London restaurant market is very close to me, and I'm in constant touch with a lot of people there, and they also had a similar experience. So last year, when they opened, with the government really helping out in terms of giving people 50% discount on dining out, I think they kind of went into it with all gusto, uh, and that did not work for them really. And the second wave hit them a lot sooner than it hit us. So in the beginning of December, I remember it was the 2nd or the 3rd of December, the government there announced a lockdown, and with very severe regulations and very strict regulations. And that continued till about February. And that was a result of doing it in a very sudden manner, which they did. But now they learned from it. And now all of them are looking forward to the 17th of May when they reopen. And whenever I've spoken to them, they're all very careful about it this time, because it can just not be the same way they did before. But also, one thing that they really did well in the country was vaccinations. And I think India is doing that now. Uh, However, compared to them, our opening in between the phase one and phase two was gradual. So, so obviously, it took us longer to get the second wave. In my belief,